Everest sits in air with half the oxygen you're breathing. At base camp, 5,300 meters up, every breath delivers roughly half what it would at sea level. Go higher and it gets worse. That's the environment. And here's the fact I want to build this whole video around. The people who live and work in that environment have fewer mitochondria in their muscle than you do. Not more. Fewer. Measurably, if you've spent any time around this topic online, that should sound wrong. The entire message of mitochondrial health content is that more is better. Build more of them. Pack them in. Density equals capability. The population best adapted to the harshest oxygen environment on the planet went the other way. Let me show you the study. Researchers ran a comparison as part of a large Everest expedition. They recruited 15 Sherpas and 10 lowlanders. The lowlanders were all born and living below 1,000 meters, and none were descended from any high-altitude population. Important detail. The Sherpas weren't elite climbers. They were ordinary people living in relatively low-lying areas. Nobody was selected for being exceptional. The team took muscle biopsies from the thigh, plus blood samples. Lowlanders were measured in London first, then again on arrival at base camp, then a third time after 2 months there. Sherpas had their baseline taken in Kathmandu. So you get a genuine before and after, in both groups, at altitude. Here's the first finding, and it's the one that matters most. At baseline, before anyone had climbed anything, Sherpa mitochondria were already more efficient at using oxygen to produce ATP. Efficiency here means output per unit of input. More ATP for every unit of oxygen consumed. That's not a training effect from being at altitude that week. It was there at rest, down in Kathmandu. Now the second finding, which is the one nobody quotes. Sherpa muscle had about 26% lower citrate synthase activity than lowlander muscle. Citrate synthase is a standard marker for how much mitochondrial material is present. Lower activity generally means less mitochondrial content, and that lined up with earlier work finding Sherpa mitochondrial volume density in the same muscle was 17 to 33% lower than in lowlanders. So put those together. Fewer mitochondria. More output per unit of oxygen. That's a completely different strategy from the one that gets sold. It's not a bigger factory. It's a better run one. And this connects directly to something I covered last week with hummingbirds. Hummingbird flight muscle runs at around 35% mitochondria by volume, and I explained why you can't copy that, because the space has to be shared with the machinery that generates force. There's a hard ceiling. Sherpas demonstrate the other half of that lesson. When the constraint is oxygen rather than power, the winning move isn't more mitochondria at all. It's better ones. So what does better actually mean here? A few things showed up. First, fuel choice. Sherpas showed a lower capacity for fatty acid oxidation. That sounds like a downgrade until you think about the chemistry. Burning fat yields a lot of energy, but it requires comparatively more oxygen per unit of energy release than burning glucose does. If oxygen is your scarcest resource, shifting toward glucose is the sensible trade. Second, muscle energetics improved, and their muscle showed protection against oxidative stress. Which fits with something I covered on Monday. When the electron transport chain runs poorly coupled or backs up, you get more reactive oxygen species. Better coupling means less of that. Third, genetics. The researchers found this adaptation appeared to be related, in part, to a particular version of a gene called PPARA, which was enriched in the Sherpa group compared to the lowlanders. PPARA is a regulator of fat metabolism. So the fuel shift has a genetic fingerprint attached to it. There's one more result worth noting, and it's the mirror image. The lowlanders' mitochondrial density declined the longer they stayed at extreme altitude. Think about what that means. Sherpas arrive with fewer mitochondria and better efficiency, and they hold that. Lowlanders arrive with more, and altitude takes them away. Two populations, two completely different responses to the same thin air. Alright. The obvious question, and the one I'd want answered if I were watching this. Can you train any of it? Here's where I have to give you a genuinely unsatisfying answer, because the human evidence is a mess and I'd rather show you the mess than pick the study that sounds best. Capacity is trainable. That part is not in dispute. Endurance training reliably raises the activity of the enzymes in the electron transport chain and improves your ability to sustain work. I've covered several of those studies on this channel. Efficiency is a different question, and the literature genuinely contradicts itself. One study compared endurance-trained people to recreationally active people, measuring mitochondrial efficiency directly in the leg. Its conclusion was that mitochondrial and contractile efficiency were unaltered by several years of endurance training, and that the improvement in energetic capacity from training appeared to be independent of any change in coupling. A study published in PNAS found something even less convenient. In endurance-trained individuals, the rate of substrate oxidation was increased, but the rate of ATP synthesis was unchanged. The authors interpreted that as a decrease in the efficiency of mitochondrial energy coupling. In other words, trained muscle was running slightly more uncoupled at rest, not less. And then a third study found that high-intensity training did enhance efficiency, in a way that depended on temperature. So we have unchanged, decreased, and increased, from 3 credible groups. That's the honest state of it. I'm not going to resolve a live scientific disagreement in a 9-minute video, and neither should anybody selling you something. What I can tell you confidently is the shape of it. Training builds capacity. That's reliable and worth doing. Efficiency, the specific thing Sherpas have, is not clearly something you train your way into, and the genetics point to it being largely inherited. Which means the free lever today comes with an unusual caveat attached. Move. It works, it's free, and it improves the thing that's actually improvable, which is how much work you can sustain. But don't let anyone sell you an efficiency upgrade. The people who genuinely have one were born with it, in a population that spent thousands of years on the Tibetan plateau. Now, where does my own recommendation sit? CoQ10 is one of the carriers in the electron transport chain, physically moving electrons between complexes. Levels tend to decline as we age. That's the claim, and it's the same one I make every time. And I want to point out something today, because it works against me. If more mitochondria and higher output were simply better, this whole niche would make more sense than it does. But the best adapted population on Earth for oxygen scarcity has fewer of them. That should make you skeptical of anything sold on the promise of maximizing a number. I'd rather tell you that than not. If you want to support the machinery, the link in the description below is an affiliate link to Mitochondrial, which is PQQ and CoQ10, with a 90-day money-back guarantee. And if you want the version where 3 studies disagree and I show you all 3, subscribe. This video is educational only and it's not medical advice. Talk to your doctor before starting new or more intense exercise.